Tanya for Tuesday, the 5th of Kislev, November 25th. Mashenke Maisa Mitzvah is Maisa Kimim. So we said, I don't know, what was the flow yesterday? Yesterday we ended up saying that a mitzvah, Torah study and prayer, very good, but a mitzvah brings it down. It's a downward vector of that holiness, of that revelation. But a physical mitzvah even more so. However, as the performance of mitzvot, these are the works. So because he said, meaning a person cannot really gaze on God. Because why? You're a creation. If you know the Creator, you'd cease to exist. However, mitzvahs are actually the work of God, even more than prayer, more than the emotions in prayer. Why? Because mitzvahs the physical mitzvah is the work of God. It's the novelty of God. Why? Because emotions, love and fear of God are man-made, and as great as they are, they're limited to your perception of God, which is not going to be pure. But the mitzvah is an accomplishment, is an amazing novelty that God creates to make it possible for us to hold in our hand the essence of God's will, even without really getting it 100% how it's God's will, how it's in the process of the chain of descent from the vessels of Atzilut to Bria Tzir Asiyah, the very nature and essence of their external aspect. So
where are you reading, Rabbi?
I'm reading page 81.
Okay.
The vessels, the English is harder than Hebrew. Divinity goes through a chain-like descent from the way it is in Atzilut, in the higher world of godly comprehension, to the lower worlds, Bria Tiasiyah, from the nature of their external aspect. For example, let's go an example. Maybe the example will help us. With the etrog, the four species. Hashem, blessed be, closes something of the very nature, essence of the internal attributes of the kindness of. In other words, we're trying to understand how everything we experience is a down here version of divinity. Divinity that exists, we call in the world of Atzilut, which is broken up to Zah and Malchut. Zah, the energy flow, the midas of that world, and Malchut, the receptor. So in the etrog, there's divinity in there. It says particularly the kindness of Zah. Not sure why, but okay. Now, but from their outward state, from the external aspect of these internal attributes, because the term external means how something relates to something outside of itself. Internal means the way it views, how it relates to itself. Right? This is the way you can deal with others and the way you deal with yourself. Inward would be the way the thing is in by itself without any need of projection. External means it's already projecting. This is as known in the case of all mitzvot requiring action. In other words, you do a mitzvah, there's some, I think the point is that something of the essence doesn't get lost in its downward migration into the physical mitzvah. I'm not exactly sure exactly how, but a little bit of that essence of godliness is pure, encapsulated in a physical esrog. Man, by contrast, who connects to God, let's say in prayer through love and awe, through thinking about God and having love and awe, even if you're a very high soul of Atzilut, since the soul is clothed in a body, cannot detect and apprehend through his soul the nature and essence of the inward attributes of kindness of Atzilut. Meaning, you are a creation. A creation is wonderful, but it is a creation. It is not the creator. It can't really, the character in a book can't really appreciate the author, because it's nothing more than a figment of the author's mind. I think there's some book like if the characters would meet their author, like what would happen?
Oh, really?
There's like a book about like a character meeting the author, like what happens to the character, like the psychological overwhelm,
Really?
something like that.
Jewish book?
No,
Mhm.
I didn't even know what it is. I heard someone talk about it once.
Mhm.
But anyways, since we are creation, we cannot detect and apprehend through our soul the nature of the pure divinity. For in general terms, Atzilut, what's Atzilut? Atzilut represents the state of Chaya in the worlds of the four worlds of Atzilut, Bria, Siyasya. We know there's 5 levels of the soul, right?
Right.
What's the core? Let's start from the lowest. Is
Nefesh.
nefesh.
Why would, before you go on, I have a question. When Yitzchak thinks he's blessing Esav, he says, "I want my nafshi is going to bless you."
Right.
Why was it his lowest level? Why would he be referring to his lowest level? I think
I don't know.
very profound. And
let's save that for Chumash. We'll try to come up with an answer then. But anyways, just very quickly, you have 4 worlds: Atzilut, Bria, Yitzir, Sira. Atzilut is not. Let's go from lowest. Lowest is Asiya, action; Yitzira, formation; Bria, creation; Atzilut, emanation. It parallels the way it is in the soul. Asiya is the nefesh, is the biological life force. Ruach is Yitzira. The world of Ruach is emotions. Yitzira, we said earlier, is emotions. The world of divine emotions, angels, whatever. Bria, the third level is neshama, intellect. That's Bria. And then Atzilut is kind of a transcendent level. It's not, limited to, it has a system, but it's very high. And that would be Chaya, the transcendent part of the soul. Anyways, so in the Chaya, we know in the soul, it encompasses transcendence, not being vested in any vessel whatsoever. With regard to the internal attributes of kindness of Zah, man is able to apprehend only their existence through intellectually generate awe and love. Meaning, you human with your human limitation mind, as wonderful as it is, can only talk about God. You can try to understand different manifestations of God, but you really understand God, the mystery of God's essence? Of course not. It's not possible. And this has the statement, "You shall see my hinder part," God told Moses, and seeing penetrates, seeing is a contradiction. Seeing is you're seeing something of the original, even if it's in a different format. That's only prophecy. For prophecy entails divestment of the physical, as explained in Rai Mehem Parsha Mishpatim. So thus, Moshe's apprehension of the essence of divinity resulted from a state of prophecy that entails divestment of the physical. But through other non-prophetic means, it's impossible for a soul to apprehend the essence of any level of Atzilut. It's a little gobbledygook, but the point is that Atzilut is like the pure Sfirot, okay? Pure divinity in whatever's in the system there. You, creation, you don't know what's flying when you see pure divinity. You don't know divinity, it's smacked you in the face, okay? Because you're just too limited. But you could talk about it. You could talk about by way of parables. You could talk about way you can appreciate that it exists. To really perceive it, that's not your operating system. This then is the reason no created being is capable of grasping anything whatsoever of the essence of divinity, the creator. Without comprehension, and if you don't comprehend, there's no real investiture or grasping or cleaving. Because you can't get it, right? If someone, like for example, a blind man, you try to explain them colors, they can't process it because they don't have that capacity, right? So we're, in a sense, we have blinders to pure divinity, being that we're limited being of creation. However, that's by a human being, even with a wonderful soul. However, as to the soul, as an etrog, by way of example, the etrog's life, the chayas, the energy, is drawn and descends from the very essence of the outer aspect of the vessel of nukva of zawatil. It actually comes from atzilut. It originates the mitzvah, the concept of the mitzvah that God is, as the way it exists is it's a spiritual code, which is truly a state of divinity. As stated in Eitz Chaim, that all fruits are rooted in Atzilut. For the 30 vessels of Atzilut descend into B'riyas Yasiyah to become the divinity of some type of descent. Let's keep going. When you don't know, you just keep going. And these are the 10 utterances by which the world was created, through enclothement in nukfa of Asiyah, essence and essence. For the vessels, so this is the big accomplishment. A mitzvah, just to pause the gobbledygook, not the gobbledygook, I'm saying the thing that's foreign to us. The Kabbalese. Rabbi Steinsaltz give an example in a metaphor. You have a book. And the book is, let's say, author writes a book. Now, that book exists on different internal and external planes. For example, there's what the author appreciates when he reads his own book. Very, very internal. That's the most, they say, the core of the book is the inside world of the author. The best he could do to put it on 2 pages. That would be an internal depiction of the book. A little less, a little more external is the words that I, the reader, get when I read it. Am I getting it as core as when the author wrote it? What's going on in what he's depicting? No, but I get some of it, right? Through the vehicle of words. And then there's just like, this is a bunch of paper with ink on it that costs $30. That's a very external depiction. So but here's the key. When I hold the book, right? While I can't really get the inner intent 100% of the author, it's in there. Even if I don't perceive it, it's in there.
We understand.
So too the mitzvah. Do we really appreciate what the divine author is intending with the mitzvah? No. But by doing it, we're at least holding it. There's some level of subliminal experience where you're connecting to the essence of God's will. You might not understand it, but you're holding it. Mm-hmm. You're doing it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Back to Kabbalese. For the vessels of Atzilut became the soul of Asiyah, which is actually a state of divinity. Right? The vessels are the lower part of the Sirot and Atzilut. For an Atzilut, he and his vessels are one. The emanator, the infinite light, and the emanation, the vessels. Because even though, it's made up of lights and vessels, they have to be one. Otherwise, it'd be duality, and that's not good for monotheism. And through
What's not good for monotheism?
Duality. If saying God has parts is not good for.
Well, that's what we're doing here is we're analyzing.
So it's a problem. So the way Kabbalah talks about parts of God, but not saying that's God, that's manifestations of God. Understand? So, and somehow the manifestations are subsumed in a oneness. So we could talk about the projections and not disrespect that has to be pure oneness at the highest level. That's right. As far as I can, understand. And through the enclothement of the essence of the soul, of the vessels, in the essence of the vessels of the Malchut, in the Nukvas, the feminine receptor of Asiya, Etrog came into being. The result is that in holding the Etrog and waving as the law requires, one is actually holding the life force which is clothed within it and which derives from the Nukva, the Malchut, the receptor of Asilut. And Malchut is united, we know, the receiver of the 10 Sfirot is united with the infinite Ein Sof light, the emanator of Atzilut Blasphemy. The vessels are one with the light. So it's kind of a couple steps, but I think the book analogy was good. Is somehow holding this book, I have the magnum opus, the real achievement and intent of the author in my hand.
Wow.
This is not the case concerning one's intention. Your intention, you're trying to do the etrog and thinking how I'm connecting to God, and this is such a wonderful experience of me connecting to God, and I have love for God, and so I'm doing the mitzvah, which is, you have to do that. You have to try to get to that kavana state. But reality is, you don't really understand God to really have that real and an essential understanding, to have a real perception, a real love and awe on that level. You can only have glimmers of God and have love and awe to that. Here, even if he is familiar with the mystical, Kabbalistic, and Hasidic meanings involved, he does not grasp and hold on to the essence of Malchut of Atzilut, the source of the Etrog, but only to the external fact of its mere existence. Even if he's familiar with the mystical meanings, he does not grasp and hold on to the essence, but only to the external fact of its mere existence.
The mere existence.
Mere existence of God.
God is it?
I guess.
Only to the external fact of its existence.
No, because the divinity that's
okay.
That is
Okay.
inside the etrog, meaning the original, the source, the malchut of Atzilut, the source of this etrog is it's a spiritual reality, and you don't really get spiritual reality 100%. You just can kind of talk about it. You can scaffold to appreciate it, but it's not really. It's colors to a blind man. However, by studying the laws of the etrog, so trying to kind of appreciate, in other words, Kabbalistic comprehension of God is limited, because I think it's a fair thing, the colors to a blind man. Like, you can talk about it, you can bring similes to it, you can bring analogies and metaphors, but you're not really, really getting it. But study the laws.
Yechidah. Whatever happened to Yechidah here?
Yechidah is probably the fifth level of the soul, would parallel in the worlds, in the cosmic worlds. I think it would parallel Keser, which is the I don't want to say that. I'm not even sure. It could be Yechidah is not a world; it's God. It's like it's the portal to God. So you can't call it a world. Maybe there's no parallel worlds to it. That's what I would think. Anyways, but moving along. However, when you study the laws of the etrog, one does attain and grasp the etrog proper and its mitzvah appropriately by speech and thought. Even more so, he who studies the esoteric dimension of the mitzvah of the etrog, according to the teachings of the Kabbalah and Chassidut, so when you learn the Torah about the etrog, both the laws, the halachas, as well as even you learn the inner idea of the etrog according to mysticism. That is different than the spiritual intentions of the mitzvah or the relevant configurations. Meaning, this, however, refers to the study of the Kabbalistic mysteries of the mitzvah itself, which cannot be inferior, is no inferior to the study of its laws, and indeed quite the contrary, even though he doesn't understand the essence. So, bottom line, spirituality as it is by itself, we are limited.
Where are you reading?
This is my own. We're finished. It would be colors to a blind man to talk about. And you should try your best. You should try to muster up a love of God the best you can do. That's part of trying your best as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
But understand that, you think you've cornered God into a certain, definition. That's not the full extent. But still you have kavanah. God's the source of life. Is God limited to being the source of life? No, God's beyond that as well. But appreciate God's the source of life. So I love my source of life. I have respect for the powerful, infinite creator. I mean, I have fear of that. I have love of the source of life. I have fear of God's, awesome power. So, okay, do your best. But understand the handicap that that will always be a certain, it's not a handicap, that is
Fact of life.
it's a fact. However, contrast that with doing a mitzvah. A mitzvah is God is able, through the vehicle almost of this I don't call it disguise, but this packaging, which God makes a packaging of mitzvahs in physical things that we can touch, feel, and learn about, right? Like an etrog. God is able to take his essence, maybe the essence as it's depicted by his divine will, and enclose that in something very, very limited, like a etrog, like a fruit. And because God is doing that so we can connect to God, when you hold the etrog, it's the exception to the rule. Typically, anything you experience is going to be a distorted perception of God because you're limited. But because God wants us to connect, so God made the mitzvahs, and God enclosed his very essence in every mitzvah in a packaging that us plebeians, simple people, can appreciate.
Wow.
Can wrap our mind around it. So